How's it going, everybody? My name's Alex, and welcome to Mountain Label Music, and we have a very educational video for you guys today. It's not going to be the most exciting video, but you're going to learn a lot of information, especially if you're working with the AVID Matrix and the DADman software. Now, if you're first getting started, especially in the Dolby Atmos platform, the DADman software can be a little confusing at first. At least it was for me. And I guess the reason why that is there's not a lot of material on YouTube about the software. So I want to be able to help you guys and give kind of a dummy rendition of how I would go about setting up the DADman software. Now, there are a lot of ways to go about this, but this is the best way and the quickest way that has been best for me and getting my studio up and running. And yeah, I guess that's it. So before we get into the DADman software, at least if you're working in Dolby Atmos, we need to do a couple things before we do anything, even opening the application. So we're going to hop up on our desktop or MacBook or whatever it may be you are using, and we're going to open the Audio Midi Setup. And if you are using the Dante virtual sound card, this is how you're going to go about setting it up. You're going to go into your Audio Midi Setup page, and you're going to right click on the Dante virtual sound card, and we're going to configure the speakers. You can also do this down here at the bottom right. And I already have the configuration set to 7.1.4 Atmos surround. Most of you guys will have it preset to stereo, but we're going to stick with Atmos for now since that's what this application is going to be for. So as of right now, you'll see that all of the channels are set directly from 1 through 12, which is all the channels in your speaker setup. In my experience, you do not have to change this. You can leave it exactly how it is, 1 through 12, unless you are looking for a more specific setup. Now, right now, when I play this test tone, it's not going to go anywhere except to the Dante virtual sound card. And right now, nothing is routed in the DADman software to be able to play out of our speakers. But for now, this will help us determine how we are going to configure our speakers later on. So if you haven't already done it, click apply and then hit done. Now, before we really jump into the DADman software, we need to make sure our virtual sound card is set up and actually started. So we're going to open Dante Controller and begin Dante Virtual Sound Card. As you can see, my Dante Virtual Sound Card is already started, and you'll want the audio channel set to 16 channels. The latency is really personal preference at that point, and your USB network interface set to 10, 100 to 1000. Next, we're going to open Dante Controller. And basically what we're going to do here is start routing our configuration from Dante Virtual Sound Card to our Matrix Studio. And the reason we want to do this is so the audio gets routed as if it were an interface. Now, one good thing about the AVID Matrix Studio is that they do have a Thunderbolt expansion card. The only downside is it's $800, and there are definitely some better workarounds to be able to use your interface at its full potential. But if you do have that Thunderbolt option card, you don't have to worry about any of the routing through Dante. But for this case, we're going to pretend that we have the worst case scenario, and this is the only way you have to set up your interface. We're going to first open the tab for the receiver being the Matrix Studio, and it says Alexander's MacBook Pro. That is my Dante virtual sound card. We're going to open up the tab for it. And once we do that, we're going to want to route 1 to 1, 2 to 2, and so on all the way up to channel 16. Now, at least in my experiences and a couple other people that have worked with Dante Virtual Sound Card and other virtual sound cards like Black Hole 16 channel, you don't want to go any higher of a count if you're wanting to play back Apple Music and other streaming platforms such as Apple TV and even Netflix that support Dolby Atmos. Because sometimes the 32 channel virtual sound card won't read properly, and it just makes things kind of funky in the mix. And as of right now, I understand that it's being perfected if it hasn't already been fixed in macOS Ventura. I'll be sure to try to keep you guys updated on the latest changes on what kind of sound card you guys should be using. And once you get that routed up, we're just going to close this out and close Virtual Sound Card. And now we're going to open up the DADman software. Now, depending on how far you have gotten into your DADman software, if you've explored it if you if you have explored any of the software yourself, this may look a little different. And if you haven't done it already, you may end up being on a default preset for your routing and your monitor profile. And there are two files you need to keep in mind, and that is the monitor profile and the routing for your interface in terms of the internal routing that isn't a monitor switching profile. First things we're going to do is we're going to go through all of the tabs and the different options within DADman software. We're going to start up here at File, and we have 4 options up at the top, separated by a sliver line. You have Open, Open Recent, Save, and Save As. These 4 options determine what you do in terms of opening or saving your routing for your interface. Like, say if I have a specific routing for music production and film production that completely changes how I do things in the interface, that doesn't involve switching different monitors and controlling how loud the speakers are or soloing different speakers, that's what you're going to refer to as your routing profile. Now down below, you will have your 5 options: Open, Import, Save, Save As, and Close profile buttons. These will be for your monitoring profiles, and this isn't in terms of how you will be monitoring your setup and options you have of switching between different monitor profiles quickly and simple. We will get more into that in just a moment. But for now, let's move on to the next tab. Next, we have the Edit tab. And I almost never use this tab. I've never had to use it. I don't really know why it's here. Because most of the time everything's just typically grayed out, so I never use it. I think this is just more of a Mac OS type deal, so we're going to ignore this tab entirely, and we're going to skip over to set the Window tab, as it is just the exact same thing essentially. I never enter full screen or use any of these buttons unless I'm using keyboard shortcuts, which are listed anyways. So we're going to also ignore the Window option. That is very basic Mac OS type tools, so you guys can learn that on your own if you wish. But the most important thing about the DADman software is the Settings tab, and we're going to pan over to that. First thing we have is our device list. This is going to give you a list of your devices. Let's go ahead and click on it first thing. And depending on how late you are in the game with opening your DADman software with your unit, with your interface that is, will determine whether you have anything showing up. And if you have your interface plugged in via Ethernet, it should be relatively quick for your interface to come up in this setting. Now, if it isn't, this checkbox isn't already checked, you will want to do that and make sure the status is listed as unit ready. This tab will also give you the option if you are required to do a firmware update, or if you need to do if you need to restart the device or load in recovery mode, any other options you'll want here. That is outside of monitoring profile and whatnot. We also have this option for the Stream Deck. We will get more into that later on. All right, we're going to close this, go into the Settings tab, and we're going to go into Monitor Profile. This, guys, is the most important piece of information that you will have when learning the DADman software, and that is your monitor profile configuration page. First thing you're going to do is be sure your unit is selected. In my case, the Matrix Studio is the only thing I have, so we're going to do that. And the next thing you're going to do after that is enable monitor, and you're going to get this talkback option. Right now, nothing will pop up. We'll get more into this menu system here in just a moment. Your Groups tab is basically a list of how everything is routed in your DADman software for quick switching. And what that means is, in terms of routing, you have your permanent routing and your temporary changes, like your fold downs, your sources, if you're switching back and forth between a lot of different monitors, hence the name Monitor Profile. The next tab over in your Monitor Profile configuration page is your fold down. Now, you might already get some presets for your fold down, and this is just my opinion. There are already some presets in the Matrix for the software that give you left, center, right to stereo, left, center, right plus your subs, which is essentially your LFE channel to your stereo, and you have a bunch of different fold downs. Now I think it's kind of weird that they don't include a 7.1.4 right off the bat for a preset. This is just my opinion anyways, but most of the time I don't even use this. If I'm going to be monitoring something in a fold down format like this, I would much rather use the built-in Dolby renderer within Logic, or if you have the actual renderer using Pro Tools or Ableton or whatever it may be, I would rather use that for the binaural settings and fold downs to stereo 5.1. Those just seem a little more accurate. Not that these aren't, but let's say if we do click on a preset, let's say we're working in 7.1 and we want to listen to stereo. We're going to click on that, and it gives you all these options to how much of each signal is put into each speaker. Let's say if we have the 7.1, we have -3 decibels is put into the left speaker instead of the full signal. And while that is probably a more true representation of a full surround sound setup, I don't trust it entirely. I would rather focus on the mixing aspect, and when I'm doing those mixing aspects, I'm going to leave it to the Dolby renderer to decide on what the fold downs sound like. I'm going to delete this for now. We're going to remove matrix, it says. What I do like to use is the fold downs as solo buttons. Let's say if I have a 7.1.4 system and I'm wanting to solo just my front, left, and right speakers, and I want to hear what's just coming through those speakers. Now I know I can just go up to each speaker and listen, or maybe turn off all my speakers except that one to see what's soloing, but it is just much easier to be able to set up a button on your AVID matrix or within your DADman software to be able to just focus in on those speakers. And so now if we click on the left and right surrounds, we're going to see that my input and output formats are set to the left and right speakers. That means the full signal is going to the left channel that's coming from the left source, and the right channel is getting the right source information. It's not summed down to stereo, it's just what Dolby Atmos coming from like Apple Music and Netflix, that's what's coming through those speakers and only those speakers. And you can do the same for the center channel. I can just put all the information that's coming from the center channel and leave it at that, and I can hit a button and I'm hearing what's exactly coming through the center channel in the mix. And I did this with my LFE channels, my top channels, my heights, I should say. I got just a side surround, my rear surround, and I even have an option where I can just solo the front of the mix with 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 channels minus the LFE, and then I can just solo the rear with just the 4 speakers. I even have a button for taking out the LFE in the mix to see how much low end needs to be added or needs to be taken out. It's all personal preference at that point, but I highly recommend these settings to anyone that's first getting started in Atmos and wants to learn more about how people are mixing their own songs, at least that are submitted to Apple Music or even Tidal or any streaming service that supports spatial audio and some kind of immersive audio. But anyways, aside from that, we're going to move on to the group formats. This is a really important page. We're going to click on preset formats, and this gives you a list of what all formats there are. And basically what these preset formats is a predetermined way of the DADman software knowing what kind of information are you receiving. If I click on the mono, you're getting one channel of audio. Now if I am sending from Dante and I send stuff to the mono as a source, I'm only going to get one of those channels. Whereas if I have Apple Music playing in lossless and I send one of those channels, it's either going to be the left or the right. We'll get more into that later. But before we move on, we're going to notice that there's even up to 9.1.6, but no option for double subwoofer. Now, why would you need a double subwoofer in Dolby Atmos? You typically don't, depending on your setup. But the reason I made my own custom format here, as you can see as 7.2.4, is because my subwoofers that I have on my Kelly Audio immersive audio bundle from Sweetwater. So Sweetwater, if you're hearing this, please sponsor me. Thanks. Anyways, the reason I did this as a 7.2.4 format is because in my system, when you put the LFE into a sub and the output from the other side, as what most people consider a loop through, is completely ignored. So I can't just loop from one LFE to the other and get the same signal or even any signal at all. So what I have to do is label a 13th channel as a low frequency effect. And the reason you want to do this is due to bass management reasons, and we'll go into more detail on the next couple of pages when we start doing some examples. Stay tuned for that. You'll really want to know how to do this on your own, and I'm going to give you guys a very dumbed down version on how to do this. But anyways, as of the group formats, this is what you're going to want to look for whenever starting your sources and creating your outputs. I'll go into more detail. We're going to make some examples. I'll teach you guys whatever you guys need to know. We're going to skip over this MOM tab. We're going to go to the Matrix Studio tab. And from a glance, we're going to just click on Control Room 1, and you're going to be given these options for switch, external, encoder press, and encoder. Basically, what these are determined by are the buttons on your interface. As I am using the Matrix Studio right now, I have 3 buttons labeled A, B, and C. I can add an external button if I have the ability to. Right now it's a talkback button. You have the option to press your encoder, otherwise known as your volume knob on your interface. That's when you press down on the volume knob, and then the encoder button yourself. Almost always the encoder button is just going to be a volume knob, but it just depends on what source you have activated. Now the last tab is the MOM tab. If you guys are able to purchase an external monitor controller, and which the DADman software does have one that is supported called the Monitor Operations Module, I believe that's what it's called. You hook that via Ethernet to the other port that you're not using for Dante in your Matrix Studio, and you have an immediate separate monitor controller. This gives you 4 layers of monitor control up to, I think it's 6 buttons. 6 buttons under 4 layers. That's 6, 12, 18, 24. That's 24 different buttons you can use for various source changes, outputs, and soloing options. And I know that sounds like a lot, especially if you're just now getting into the game. I'll show you guys in just a moment of what I'm talking about. It's just so cool, I'm telling you. All right, and we're going to close out of this tab and go back to the settings. We're going to look at MIDI settings. I don't mess with this, especially if you have a USB port for your MIDI and your output. I wouldn't mess with anything involving this on your interface. I just don't think it's necessary, I guess. Leave a comment down below of what these settings are for. Any setting that I've mentioned that I was like, you don't have to touch, let me know what you think about that, because I haven't used any of these settings. I have a very basic Dolby Atmos setup, and I want you guys to help me in case I'm missing something. I want to be able to help everybody that I can. The Yukon button, I think that's something to do with Pro Tools. That's not something I've ever messed with. But anyways, we're going to go down on what the actual software looks like. First, you have your AD, your analog to digital conversion. You can switch these between instrument and mic pre's, and your 48 volts right there. You have your mute buttons, and this is just essentially your analog to digital conversions right on there. Your next one is your digital to analog conversion. This will be mainly for your DB25 cable, which is what you hook up the AVID matrix with, and the outputs that come with it, unless you have added anything otherwise. In my case, this is how my setup is and what channels are being routed to which. My first 3 channels is my left, center, right, and then I got 2 LFEs side by side. So I ran 1 DB25 cable to the front of my room, called the first 8 channels good, moved the 1 to the back, and plugged those in. Easy peasy. Our next one will be our monitor profile. We don't have anything on here yet, so nothing's going to come up. The next one is some more routing. So what I am running right now is a Focusrite 18i20, and I have that being sent into the interface and back out through Dante. So whenever I go into my DAW, all my inputs are Dante, in and out. So I don't have to worry about anything with the Matrix Studio or the Focusrite. It's all coming in and out of one. That is the power that Dante gives you with the virtual sound card and any Dante-enabled devices. Our final tab over here is your configuration tab. My sync source is ADAT1 because it's the last interface in my chain. Most likely yours will be internal. If I try to set that, my ADAT interface is going to be blown out of the wazoo. So we're going to ignore that and move it back to ADAT1. But this is a lot of extra routing that is really nice to have if you have a lot of outboard gear or other interfaces, or you're just wanting some kind of fancy setup that's a little more intuitive for whatever you're doing. Now, let's get into some examples. I'm going to click up here to settings and go down to monitor profile. And the key command for that is Shift Command M. And now we are back to our monitor profile configuration page. The first thing we're going to do is right click on this box here and click on the pop-up menu that says Add Monitor. This is going to add a single monitor control. This is essentially our encoder knob, in which it is not active whenever I turn it on my interface because there's nothing routed yet. First thing we're going to do is click on this arrow, and this is going to give us another list of options. The first option is your outputs, your sources, your fold down, and some extra metering options. Your outputs is essentially what the AVID matrix brings in and then pushes out, but only the push out part. So the first thing we need to do is go to our sources, which essentially reads as what is coming into the interface. The AVID matrix doesn't know what you want to bring in, so you have to tell it what to do. It's not as easy as plug and play like a basic Focusrite USB interface. It knows exactly what it is unless you change it in the interface beforehand. With this kind of interface, it's not as easy as just plug and play. First thing we're going to do is right click on sources. We're going to add new source, and it'll give us a drop down menu, and we're going to click on that. It gives us new input set and a stereo option. It gives us the left and right roles, the option to assign channels. You can also add labels if you'd like, and trim options if that is something you are interested in. The reason you might want to do a decibel trim is because of timing issues and just difference in volume depending on how many speakers you have in your setup. In which, if you are working in Dolby ATMOS and in a 7.1 configuration, that is very important to you guys. First thing we're going to do is we're going to rename this set to ATMOS source. Now this can be whatever you want as long as it's easy to remember for you. I just call it ATMOS source because that's where my ATMOS is going to. We also have to change this from stereo. We're going to change the group format. If you're working with a format that you allow the LFE channel in 2 subs to loop through, you will want to do 7.1.4. Now, where I have to configure my setup in a way I have to have a separate channel for the LFE individually, we're going to do 7.2.4 from my custom group formats, like we said before. Now we have a list of roles that correlate between a 7.2.4 system. Now this is essentially the same thing as a 7.1.4 system, but with the extra LFE channel. So basically what we're going to do is correlate the same channels that we configured earlier in the audio Midi setup into the Dante configuration. And the first one was the left channel. We're going to right click, go to Dante main because that's where it's being sent to. We're going to go to left. Now, as you can see, this already has a label because I have labeled it ahead of time. That is something that I highly recommend you guys in case you guys lose your monitoring profiles for some reason. I'm pretty sure these labels will stay, but I'm not 100% sure. It'd be better off just to do it anyways so you guys have that next time in case you need to reprogram the way your setup is in your studio. I'm just going to go ahead and label all of these and we'll go on to the next step. Now you'll notice that on the low frequency effect number 2, I've routed it to the same channel as I did with my LFE number 1. And that is because I want them to receive the same signal. That there is no 13th channel in Dolby Atmos that Apple is pushing out as far as I know. So what I want both of these channels is to have the same exact sound. And now that it is all configured in our source, we have to make sure that this source goes out to certain speakers. So what we're going to do is close out the sources and we're going to open our outputs. We're going to right click on it and add a new set. We're going to click on this arrow and now it's outputting to stereo. We're going to change the name of this to ATMOS output. Again, you can name this whatever you wish, whatever is easiest for you. This is just what I'm giving as an example. We are going to change the group format to 7.2.4, and we're going to do the exact same thing, but with the correlation that we have with our analog out DB25 cable. Let's say if you have that cable going to the front of your room and the first channel of the snake is your left speaker, you're going to set that left speaker to DA line 1 as left. Now again, I have all of these labeled, so I'm going to run through that real quick. I highly recommend you write these down before coming back to your computer. That way it's easier for you when you come back into the DADman software to assign all of your outputs. All right, now that we have the outputs configured, we should have sound. So the next thing we're going to do is open Apple Music. And I'm pretty sure you can do this with Tidal as well. I'm not sure if Dolby has this available. What you're going to type in your search engine is Dolby Labs. You're going to go to the artist page and go to the functional testing. You're going to scroll down and find 7.1.4. Left top front, right top front, left top rear, right top rear. This will play back in your system exactly how it's supposed to in your setup, as long as you select at your top right your sound card being Dante Virtual Sound Card. And also, let's go into your Apple Music settings. We're going to use the key command, comma. We're going to go to your playback options. You're going to make sure that this Dolby Atmos setting is set to automatic. If it is set to off, it will completely ignore it and tell you that you need to upgrade your system or whatever Dolby does with their fancy stereo stuff. But we're going to set it to automatic and click OK. And now if the playback is set to Dolby Atmos, it should play back properly. So now I'm going to hit play and we're going to listen to the playback prompt.
Left, right, center, left surround, right surround, left rear surround, right rear surround, left top front, right top front, left top rear, right top rear.
And I know you guys aren't able to hear it on the microphone nor on your headphones or whatever you're playing back on. But what just happened was the narrator read out each individual speaker in relation to where the speaker is at. And we have correctly set up our DADman software to be able to play back Dolby Atmos, that is. Now, you don't have to do this with Apple Music. If you have a test tone within a DAW with the Dolby Atmos penner going into the Dolby Atmos renderer, you can test it the exact same way. Now, for my channel, I'll give you guys kind of a bonus tip. I'm using Logic Pro. And we're going to go ahead and open it up because that is what I'm using for this screen recording. And we're going to go into the audio settings for this project. So again, just like in Apple Music, I'm going to hit Command, comma. And that's going to open up our settings. You'll probably come up with this devices page because that's where everybody shows up. But we're going to go and skip over to the I/O assignments. Now, just like in your DADman software, and with Dante, whatever your configuration is with Dante, you're going to correlate your speakers on your outputs as if it were in Dante or in your Apple Mac configuration page. And make sure your left output is output 1, your right output is output 2, center's output 3, LFE and 4, and so on. And that's just something I want to let you guys know, especially if you're working in Logic Pro, because I love the Dolby Renderer in Logic Pro. It is way simpler to use if you're starting out. I recommend the Dolby Renderer for anybody's experience, but that is a whole another video that we'll get into. Now, on some final notes, we're going to go ahead and go back to our DADman software. We're going to configure some fold down ideas. Basically, what I mean by that is referring back to what I mentioned earlier. I don't care for the presets in the DADman software to fold all the speakers down to stereo Or like say if you made an Atmos mix and wanted to hear what it would sound like in a stereo environment or in like a 2-speaker setup, I don't care for the way that the DADman software figures those options out. I recommend just routing through your DAW and using the renderer built in to select different monitoring profiles in terms of fold down. But with the fold down option in DADman, we can hit Shift Command M to open up our monitor configuration page again. And again, on our fold down page, we have these different soloing options. We're going to go back to groups, go to this monitoring option, and go to the tab called Fold Down. And basically we're going to right click it and hit the Add Fold Down button. Now we have all these options to select. And I'm just going to go ahead and add all of these options actually. Basically what I have done now is given the option to select certain speakers in a Dolby Atmos mix to hear what exactly is going on in that speaker. So now if I close out this tab, let's go play a song on here. Let's go down here to our Atmos playlist that I have curated. I will be sure to leave a link in the description for you guys to check out this playlist if you're using Apple Music. Let's say for the first option, Hot by Emma Love. That is one of the best Atmos mixes, and if you guys ever have the chance to check it out, even in spatial audio with the binaural settings, it's awesome. But what I'm going to do now is turn my monitor down a little bit with the encoder knob, and I'm going to hit play on the song. You'll see the logo at the top left that has the Dolby Atmos symbol. Okay, something's not right here. Oh, there we go. So basically what had happened was the left and right surround fold down was already selected and my full Atmos system wasn't playing back. Only the left and right channels were. And I was really confused there for a second. So now we're going to uncheck this fold down and go back and play the full mix. I'm going to hit play on the song and we're going to solo some different channels. Right now I only have the left and right channel soloed. I'm going to solo the center channel. I'm going to solo the sides. So now I only hear the side surrounds, the top channels, the heights. I'm going to pause the music. And that just gives you the option to be able to play back the music in a way that's for you to be able to learn how to mix in Dolby Atmos. It's super cool referencing, and I wish more people knew about this. And I'm hoping to be able to teach you guys how to reference your own songs in stereo and in mono and even in Dolby Atmos. So if you guys want to see that video, leave a comment down below or message me directly on my Instagram. Here's my tag and here's my information. Please go check it out. Thank you very much. But anyways, so what good does this do if you have to have the software always open and you have to switch back between these fold downs? Well, you don't have to. You can use the buttons on your Matrix Studio to solo these different speakers. So let's go back into our monitor configuration page. Let's go to the Matrix Studio. We're going to go to control room number 1. Let's select switch A. Let's say I want to make this my left and right speaker solo. So what you're going to do is right click on the A switch and select down to the monitor tab. And you see all these different options you have for what you can do with this button. You can dim the speakers, mute them all together, and you can even monitor delay enabled and a bunch of different options. But for this option, we're going to do fold down, left and right, surround. We're going to make that element active, which basically means when you have it selected already on, it's going to go to the left and right surround. Now when you press it again, it's going to go back to its full Dolby Atmos surround. So let's give that a try. We're going to hit the play button on my keyboard. Now I'm going to hit the A button on my interface. and go back. I'm gonna hit pause. It's as simple as that. That's super cool. And you can also see in the DADman software how it's reacting with the sources. Let's go back to our monitor configuration page. Let's put label B on the monitor. We're gonna make those our fold down in the rear surrounds. So now we're gonna close this. I'm gonna hit play. I'm gonna unsolo the left and right. And I'm going to put it back in the rear surrounds. And we're only going to hear the rear surrounds. And as you can see by the diagram, only the rear surrounds are being played right now. Now when I press the button again, we're going to go back to full Dolby Atmos. Oh, that song is so good in Dolby Atmos. I highly recommend anybody that gets the chance to listen to a Dolby Atmos calibrated setup and ready to go and listen to the song Hot by Emma Love. It's super cool. Definitely check her out. So before you guys head out of here, I want to give you one last bonus detail that really makes DADman pop off that I actually almost forgot about. We're going to go into our monitor profile configuration page and we're going to right click on our Atmos output that we've already configured. We're going to right click that and go down to bass management preset. Basically what this is going to allow you to do is set your frequency crossovers between your satellite channels, also known as your 7 channels around and your 4 above, to have some of that low end sent to the subwoofers. Now while this isn't really the LFE channel, it is being sent down the same cable as the LFE. And this will make your satellite channels sound more like full range speakers. Typically you want your satellites to be at a low pass filter of 80 Hz, meaning anything under 80 Hz is going to go to the subwoofers, and all of the mid frequency information above 80 Hz and all the high frequencies are going to go to the rest of the speakers. This allows for a cleaner low end and a better sounding mix overall. Now what you're going to do under the LFE settings is set your low pass filter as well at a 24 dB octave like the rest of the setup, and I recommend doing the filtered frequency at 150. The standard used to be at 120, and there are producers that mention that having the crossover set at 120 causes some kind of phase issues. Just to completely make it equal for everybody, most producers ended up doing their bass management at 150 Hz. And the last thing we're going to check is make sure that this set 10 dB gain on LFE is checked. Now typically the low frequency effect channel itself on surround sound systems are an extra 10 decibels or typically louder than the regular low end just coming from the main speakers. So this is going to give you a really good replication of what that'll actually sound like in a surround sound system. In a lot of music anyways, you're probably not going to use a lot of the LFE. It really depends on what kind of music you're mixing and what your goal is for the mix. Either way, you do want to have that 10 dB gain on the LFE. We're going to hit apply, and your bass management is set to go. And the very last thing I want to show you guys, and we're going to go back to the monitor profile configuration again, is the MOM tab. So basically this is going to be your monitor operations module, I think is what it stands for. Yeah, let's go with that. And typically what will happen is you plug it in via Ethernet to your back of your Matrix Studio, and it's going to pop up in your MOM settings as long as it is enabled as in your device list. But right now you're going to notice that it says Stream Deck. Now basically what this is, I am using my Stream Deck as a MOM monitor profile. And if you would like to see how that is used, be sure to click on this video if I have it uploaded by then. If not, I'll be sure to leave a comment down below on when that video gets uploaded. Otherwise, that's essentially all I have to give you about the DADman software. I'll see you guys in the next video. Have a great day.